Many years ago in Medina, there lived a young man named Kweku Mensah. Kweku was born like every other Ghanaian child with a round belly and a very big hope. His mother would carry him on her back through the dusty streets, telling neighbors, "This my son will go far. His head is very sharp." People would nod because in Ghana, prophecy is free. Medina grew around Kweku. The roadside sellers knew his name. The woman who fried kose would say to him, "Kweku, don't run, you'll fall." But he would still run because children always believed the ground would respect them. As years passed, Kweku studied really hard. He would sit under a dim light and read his books. When other boys played football, he would be busy studying. As a result, he passed off with flying colors. That day, his mother danced and shouted, "First class! My son came out with first class!" His grandmother clapped and said, "Education is good, but remember character too." At that time, Kweku believed education would open every locked door in Accra. He did not know that some doors open only for those who know somebody. Fast forward to 2026, it was a day to Independence Day and the streets were already alive. Flags hung from kiosks. Children painted their cheeks red, yellow and green, and a radio played old high life music that sounded hopeful. Inside a small rented room with cracked paints lived the same Kweku. He was now 26 years old, lying on his bed and staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly. He picked his phone and frowned. No bank alerts. He checked his email and saw, "We regret to inform you." He dropped the phone and sighed painfully. Then a knock came on the door. "Kweku Mensah!" He sat up. The knock came again. He opened the door and his landlord stood there holding his keys like contraband. "Good morning, sir," Kweku said. "Is it good?" the landlord asked. "You are owing me 3 months' rent. Today is March 5th. "Yes, sir," Kweku said. "It's almost Independence Day." The landlord nodded. "Good. Ghana is independent. When will you be independent from debts?" Kweku laughed small. "I am sorting something, sir." "You better sort it quickly, oh," the landlord shouted. "This house does not eat excuses." "I will soon pay," Kweku promised. "You have been saying that since December," the landlord said. Kweku said nothing. The landlord adjusted his slippers and then added, "By evening, let me see efforts." After the landlord left, Kweku shut the door carefully because even anger must respect rent. Just then, his phone rang. It was his mother calling. "My son, happy independence in advance." "Happy independence, ma," Kweku muttered. "Will you go out to watch the parade tomorrow?" she asked. "No," Kweku replied. "Why?" Kweku hesitated and then asked, "Ma, what am I celebrating?" His mother was quiet for a moment. "We are celebrating freedom, Kweku." "Freedom to do what?" Kweku asked. "I finished school 3 years ago. I have applied everywhere but got nothing. Ama's school fee is due tomorrow." The landlord just reminded me that independence does not cancel rent. "Kweku," his mother said. "Don't talk like that." "Like what?" he asked. "Like a man who has already given up," she replied. Kweku exhaled. "I am tired, mommy." "Your grandmother wants to speak with you," his mother said. He heard movement and then his grandmother's voice came on. "Kweku." "Yes, grandma." "Today is not a day to complain," his grandma said. "It is a day to be honest," Kweku replied. "Yes, but remember, honesty without respect becomes noise," grandma said calmly. Kweku rubbed his forehead. "Grandma, things are very hard." She did not argue. She just told him, "When we were young, we feared soldiers. Now you fear unemployment. Every generation has its own battle." "Did your battle end?" Kweku asked. Grandma paused. "No battle truly ends. It just changes shape." After the call, Kweku opened Twitter. Politicians were posting smiling pictures and influencers wrote long messages about patriotism. Everyone appeared proud. After scrolling for a few minutes, Kweku typed slowly, "Happy independence. We are independent but still dependent." He pressed send. And unexpectedly, the post began to spread. Likes increased and comments rushed in. One user wrote, "Finally, someone is brave." Another user wrote, "Ungrateful youths." However, Kweku didn't end there. He went to TikTok Live and began, "Let us be honest, we are suffering. Prices are high, jobs are scarce, yet we are dancing." Comments flooded the screen. "Yes, speak the truth. We need more like you." Kweku grew bold and continued, "Our grandparents fought in 1957. Good, but what about us?" Suddenly, a female voice came from behind him. "What about you?" Kweku turned and saw his mother standing at the doorway. She had arrived without him hearing. She wore her old clothes in national colors. "Grandma, I am on live." "I know," she replied. "Then please let me finish," Kweku said. His grandma looked at him seriously. "Finish what? Complaining?" The comments on the screen began to react. "Let grandma talk. Respect her." Kweku swallowed hard. "Grandma, things are different now." "Yes," grandma said, "but different does not mean better." Kweku ended the live and the room became quiet except for the ceiling fan. His grandmother sat on the plastic chair and said, "When independence came, we did not know if it would survive the week. We mainly celebrated because we had dignity." "But dignity does not pay rent," Kweku replied. His grandma nodded. "Rent does not give dignity either." Kweku looked at her. "Grandma, what if independence is not enough?" His grandma smiled faintly. "Then build what is missing," she replied. Kweku did not answer after that. That night, the noise of celebration started. Even when darkness covered Medina, music continued to travel through the streets like a stubborn visitor. Children who should have been asleep argued about whose father's flag would be bigger tomorrow. The country was determined to enjoy herself. Inside the small room, silence sat heavily. Kweku lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. His grandmother had spread her clothes on the floor to pray before sleeping. He could hear her soft voice. "Grandma," he called into the darkness. "Yes? Do you truly believe we are better now?" She did not answer at once. She said, "We are freer. Better is something we must work for." Kweku turned to face the wall. "Work with what? Connections? Corruption?" His grandma sighed. "You are angry, Kweku." "I am realistic," Kweku said. His grandma did not argue. She just told him, "Sleep. Morning will bring its own answers." Kweku closed his eyes and after running around with his mind, sleep took him and pushed open a door. He found himself standing in a large open field. The air felt different. There were no tall buildings, no billboards, no car horns, only a restless crowd gathered under the night sky. He looked down at himself. He was not wearing his t-shirts or shorts. He wore simple clothes like those in old photographs. "Where am I?" he whispered. A man beside him glanced over. "You are late. They are about to lower the British flag." Kweku's heart began to beat faster. In front of him stood a pole with a flag he had only seen in history books. Soldiers stood nearby, looking stiff and vigilant. The crowd murmured with fear and excitement. A young woman beside him held her breath. "What if they change their mind?" she asked. "They will not," a man replied. Kweku turned and blinked twice. He saw his grandmother's face clearly. But this was not the bent woman from Medina. This was a younger version who was strong and fierce. He stared at her, but she did not recognize him. Suddenly, the British flag began to descend slowly. The crowd became silent. Even the wind paused. Kweku felt something heavy rise in his chest. At that moment, the new flag rose. Red, yellow and green with a black star in the middle. The crowd erupted. Some shouted, some cried, while some fell to their knees. A man climbed onto the platform and began to speak about freedom, about self-rule, and about destiny. Kweku listened, but what he noticed most was not the speech, it was the faces. Nobody there looked comfortable. They looked brave. He turned to the younger version of his grandmother and asked, "Are you not afraid?" She looked at him strangely. "Of course I am." "Then why are you smiling?" he asked. "Because fear can be controlled better than chains." Before he could respond back, there was a sudden movement. A group of soldiers shifted positions and some people panicked. "Stand firm," someone shouted. Kweku felt fear too, not the fear of unpaid rent this time or the fear of unemployment. This one was different. This was fear that freedom might disappear before sunrise. He stepped back as the scene began to blur. The cheering became distant and the flag dissolved into darkness. He opened his eyes and the room in Medina returned. The fan was still dead from power outage. Sweat covered his forehead. His grandmother stared on the floor. "You are breathing loudly," she said without opening her eyes. Kweku sat up slowly and whispered, "Grandma." "Yes." "What was it like?" "The Independence night." She opened her eyes and looked at him carefully. "What did you see?" Kweku hesitated. "Were you afraid?" She smiled faintly in the darkness. Everybody was afraid of the future, but we were more afraid of remaining the same. Kweku swallowed hard. He looked out through the window and asked, "Grandma, what if we have remained the same?" His grandma pushed herself up and sat properly. "If you believe that, then you must decide whether you will complain about it or change it." Kweku looked down at his hands. "I don't know how." His grandma leaned back against the wall. "Neither did they," she said. The room fell silent again. By morning, light returned and the ceiling fan started moving again, pretending nothing had happened. His grandmother was already awake, sweeping the small room. "Kweku," she said without looking at him, "are you going out today?" "Yes," Kweku replied. "For what?" she asked. He hesitated. "To see. It's Independence Day after all." Grandma nodded. "Okay, seeing is good, but just make sure you also listen." Kweku washed himself quickly, wore a simple shirt and stepped into the streets. Medina was alive. Flags hung from kiosks and taxi drivers argued about politics. A group of young men were debating loudly near a bar. "This country is finished," one of them said. "Finished people cannot finish a country," another one replied. Kweku walked toward Independence Square. The city looked proud. Vendors sold small flags and soldiers stood in neat lines. He stood at the edge of the crowd and watched. A group of young people nearby were holding placards that said things like, "We need jobs, not speeches. Youth deserve opportunity. Freedom must feed us." One of them noticed him. "You're the guy from Twitter, right?" Kweku blinked. "Which guy?" "The one who said we are independent but dependent." A few others turned to look at him. "That tweet was powerful," someone said. "Come and stand with us." Kweku felt a strange mixture of pride and fear. "I only tweeted," he said. "And today we are speaking," the first young man replied. "Unless your courage is only online." Those words stung, so Kweku joined them. They began chanting peacefully, asking questions like, "What are the plans for youth? How many graduates are unemployed? What is independence without opportunities?" Some people in the crowd clapped while some frowned. A man shook his head and muttered, "These children talk too much." Within minutes, police officers approached them and one officer said, "This is not an approach approved gathering. We are peaceful, one young woman holding a placard replied. You need permission for this, the officer said. We need jobs, someone answered. The tension rose like heat. One of the young men whispered, Kweku, say something. Kweku swallowed his fear and stepped forward slightly. Officers, we are only asking questions. The officer looked at him. And who are you? Kweku almost said, I am trending. Instead, he said, a citizen. The officer's face did not change. Move aside. When the group refused, they were pushed back and chaos began to grow. People scattered, a placard fell and people shouted. In the confusion, Kweku found himself inside a police truck with 3 others. He sat quietly, but one of the young men asked, half laughing, so Twitter brought you here? Kweku did not respond. At the station, they were told to sit and wait, and they remained there for hours. An older man sat beside him on the wooden bench. His hair was grey, but his back was bent. You look surprised, the old man said. I did not expect this, Kweku replied. Freedom is not always comfortable, the man said. Kweku asked, have you been arrested before? The man smiled. Yes, in 1978. For what? Kweku asked. For asking questions. Kweku stared at him. The man continued. Young man, don't confuse noise with impacts. What do you mean? Kweku asked. You can shout online for years, but if you don't build, you will only grow tired, the man replied. By evening, they were released with a warning. When Kweku stepped outside, the sky was already turning orange. His phone was full of messages. Are you safe? You were brave. Police cannot silence us. However, Kweku did not feel brave. He felt exposed. When he returned to Medina, his grandmother was sitting outside his house, watching children chase each other with paper flags. You went to see, she asked. Yes, Kweku nodded. And what did you see? He sat beside her and said, I saw celebration. I saw protest. I saw police. She nodded slowly. And what did you learn? Kweku hesitated. That tweeting is easy. His grandma looked at him carefully. And what else? Standing is harder, Kweku replied. His grandma smiled. That night, Kweku did not open Twitter immediately. Instead, he brought out an old notebook from his drawer. It contained ideas he once wrote during university, app ideas, training ideas, and small business plans. He flipped through the pages. His grandmother watched him from the corner. What are you looking for? She asked. Something useful, Kweku said. He paused on one page, Community Coding Hub for Youths. He had written it 2 years ago as a joke between friends. Grandma, he said, what if independence is not about waiting for the government? His grandma adjusted her wrapper. What if it never was? She said. Kweku laughed. But I don't have money to even start anything. You have knowledge, his grandma said. But that does not pay rent, Kweku argued. It might, she replied. The next morning, Kweku went to the small church near their house. Pastor, please, can I use the hall in the evenings? The pastor asked for what? To teach coding. It is free at first, Kweku said. The pastor looked surprised. Will anyone come? I don't know, Kweku said honestly. Well, permission was granted to him for 3 evenings a week. Kweku borrowed 2 old laptops from friends and used his small savings to buy a whiteboard. On the first day, 3 boys came. One of them wore slippers that were too big for his feet. And one asked immediately, will this help us travel abroad? Kweku replied, it will help you think. They looked unsure, but Kweku began anyway. That evening, he finally opened Twitter and typed, Independence is not a holiday. It is an assignment. I am starting a free coding class in Medina. If you want to build, join me. The likes were fewer this time and the comments were emotionless. One person wrote, this is good. Another person wrote, let us see how long it lasts. Kweku put the phone down. The next week was not easy. From 3 students, they became 5. 5 became 8. They sat on plastic chairs inside the small church hall, with the whiteboard leaning against the wall like a tired witness. The laptops were old. One of them even shut down whenever it felt slight pressure. "Sir," one boy asked on the third day, "is coding harder than football?" Kweku replied, "Yes, but football does not always pay either, you know, right?" The boy nodded seriously. Soon, word began to spread, and a small blog wrote about the Medina tech boy. His old tweets resurfaced again. This time, people linked it to action. Then, one afternoon, a black SUV stopped outside the church hall. The children paused as a well-dressed man stepped out. His shoes were too clean for Medina dust. "Are you Kweku Mensah?" the man asked. "Yes," Kweku nodded. "I have heard about your initiative. It's very inspiring." Kweku waited. The man continued smoothly. "I work with Honorable Kofi's office. He is passionate about youth empowerment." Kweku remained silent. "We would like to sponsor this program." The students looked at him with wide eyes. Kweku asked carefully, "How?" "We would donate new laptops, a bigger venue, and media coverage, all funded," the man said. The offer floated in the air like an irresistible perfume. "And in return?" Kweku asked. The man smiled. "We just need partnership. You will appear in a few campaign materials and speak positively about the government's youth policies. Nothing dramatic." The hall grew quiet. One of the boys whispered, "Sir, say yes, say yes." Kweku looked at the laptops in front of him. He imagined 30 students, 50, a proper center with full air conditioning, stability. He imagined his landlord's face when rent was paid in full. "When do you need my answer?" he asked. "Soon," the man replied. "Opportunity does not knock forever." After the SUV left, the students surrounded him. "Sir, this is big. You can become famous. You can travel." Kweku smiled. That night in his small room, he sat on his bed staring at the wall. His grandmother was shelling granuts calmly. "Grandma," he began, "if help comes with conditions, is it still help?" She did not look up. She just asked, "What kind of conditions?" Kweku explained, and she said, "When independence came, some people also wanted conditions." "What happened?" Kweku asked. "Some accepted, but some refused." "Which ones were wiser?" Kweku asked. She looked at him directly and said, "Which ones slept peacefully?" Kweku lay back on his bed. "Grandma, I can expand this program." "And tie your conscience?" she asked. Kweku did not answer. The next morning, he called the man and said, "Thank you for your offer, but I cannot accept." There was silence on the line. Then the man said, "You are making a mistake." "Possibly," Kweku replied, "but it will be my mistake." The line went dead. Unfortunately, within a week, the small blog that praised him posted a new article questioning his intentions, and anonymous accounts began to mock him online. So, where are the big sponsors? Empty activists. Noise without backing. Even 2 of his students stopped coming, and the landlord knocked again. "By end of this month, I need my money." For the first time since starting the class, Kweku felt doubts. Attendance dropped from 8 to 5, then back to 7. One evening, only 2 students came. One of them asked, "Sir, are we continuing?" Kweku looked at the nearly empty room and replied, "Yes, even if it is only you." He began teaching as though the room were full. And then, weeks later, one of the boys, Kojo, built a simple website for a local food vendor. The vendor began receiving more orders. Kojo announced excitedly one evening, "Sir, she paid me." "How much?" Kweku asked. Kojo smiled widely. 200 cedis. It was not much, but it was proof. Soon, another student secured a small remote internship. Word spread again, and the church hall grew fuller. On the next Independence Day, 1 year later, the coding class had 22 regular students. 3 of them had steady remote jobs. One had started designing flyers for small businesses in Medina. Kweku stood outside the hall that morning holding a small Ghana flag. His grandmother stood beside him. "You are not angry today," she observed. "I am tired," Kweku replied honestly. She laughed. "Good tired or bad tired?" "Good tired," Kweku replied. The children inside were decorating the hall with red, yellow, and green paper. "Sir," Kojo called out, "are we celebrating or coding?" "Both," Kweku replied. He turned to his grandmother and said, "Grandma, independence was not enough." She raised an eyebrow. "But it was a beginning," he added. His grandma smiled. "Now you understand." The flag in his hand moved gently in the wind. It no longer looked like decoration for a holiday. It looked like responsibility. In the streets of Medina, there were still potholes. There were still complaints. The landlord still expected rent. Ghana was still not perfect, but something had changed. Freedom had moved from memory into action. And from then on, Kweku decided not to wrestle with his country. He would walk with her. Thank you for watching this story. This is my own little way of saying happy independence to my Ghanaian besties. Just like Kweku, please don't wrestle with your country. Walk with her. There will surely be a way. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section and give the story a thumbs up. Share the story out with your loved ones and subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye.